Sometimes we forget why we're here. It's easy to fall off track. These help us remember.
These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Growing up, I had a dream, something no one else could see. Tell me what it means when your faith is falling beneath your knees and you can't breathe. Everything you see reminds you of what you're not. You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they wanna do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shame. And that's the reason I'm staying up late, trying to find a way to escape the stereotypes this day and age is making me feel like the only way I'll be happy is getting signed to a label and making money through rapping. I wanna share my emotion because this world is attacking the very principle of life that lets the people be happy. If you don't have a reason to breathe, why even live? These battle scars are impressions of everything that it is. That reached 100 million people, I tell them there's a reason that we're all created equal. Cause some decide to be great and some decide a sequel to an average person's life is simply what they want to be. So you make your decision, all I know is what I'm given. Won't define the life I lead or the way I dwell in existence. I've seen a greater image on the walls of where I'm living, and the words twisted and scripted remind me of something written. Faith is a gift that is given down to the people. If one believes it, one receives it. It's given if it is needed. Don't ever think you're trapped in a life that you never wanted. Your options are infinite, that's some mathematical logic. I'm not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers and these battle scars on my church. Not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers, these battle scars on my church.
Don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change.
All right, everyone. I seem to have... There we go. Now I'm straight. Well, that didn't come out right. Maybe I'm not. Okay, it's been a while since we've visited our commie friends here at the People's Party. And hi there, Dave. I see you in chat. And thank you for watching on YouTube. If anyone who's on Facebook would scoot to YouTube, it does better for my algorithm. And hey there, Julian. And look at all of you guys. That is wonderful. So yeah, it's been a while since we checked in on our commie friends. So we've got quite a bit to go over. So we'll get to that quickly. I got all of the clips lined up, but let me do my quick spiel. If you enjoy my content, please hit the like thing. I know we got to pay tribute to the YouTube gods, and subscribe. And if you really, really like my content and you want to make me feel like a special girl and give me a little bit of beer money, you could go over to Patreon. I usually put it on the bottom of my screen. I didn't do it today. If you go to Patreon, it's in the show notes, but it's Pink Flame of Liberty. Easy to find. I get super, super happy when at the end of the show I see I have a new subscriber. So if you want to make me happy, you can do that. I'm laying on the guilt. All right, without further ado, let's see what the People's Party is doing. I want to set up the first clip, though. Not all of these are from their public call that I usually cover. One of these is something called the Annalise Show. And it's a political commentator, far-left political commentator. And she had some interesting clips. And she had the producer from the Jimmy Dore show on as a guest. And that's what we're going to be watching for the first few clips. And then it's going to switch back and forth to their like public calls as well. So, yeah, wanted to let you know who this lady was that you hadn't seen. It's the host of the Annalise show. So let's go for it.
I don't think I would have known today was inauguration if it weren't for you.
You're welcome.
Remind me that it's common, like, isn't it actually here today? And I'm happy to celebrate this momentous occasion of all my disappointments coming together in the first day of Joe Biden's presidency. And just come on. I mean, I thought it was weird saying President Trump.
Right.
President Biden.
I love them, okay? Because they're not pulling any punches. They know Biden's no good. And they're from the left. And they have no problem saying that. Meanwhile, I'm always hardest on my own people. As the saying goes, I can call my sister ugly, but you can't call my sister ugly or I'll kick your ass. So I can criticize the Libertarian Party. We don't have the balls to criticize Biden. But those people on the left who are brand new and still remember what they're here for. Ooh, this jacket is really bright on camera. Emily Goldberg got this for me. I love it. It's like so soft and I just love it. But yeah, they'll say what they really feel about Biden. But meanwhile, we're pussyfooting around the issue and playing nice. And we're still pretending like all we got to say is Orange Man bad and we'll be safe. Well, sorry, you don't have the Orange Man to kick around anymore. Now we got to start dealing with real issues rather than the troll in chief. And they certainly didn't hesitate. I wish we had those guts.
The reason why we almost didn't notice what today was because it's not an exciting moment. It's not an exciting moment. This is supposed to be a day of, hope and renewal and, looking forward to the future. And the truth is, we're in the middle of a crisis. And he's already going back on the first basic thing that he promised, which was a $2,000 check. That's now $1,400 because we didn't read the fine print. And, it's already starting off on a bad note. We already know that he's not going to do anything substantial to move our country forward. And there's a lot of concern already because all of these amazing things that he says that he's going to do in his first 100 days, he's already talking about doing it through bipartisanship instead of just getting it through since you have the House, the Senate, and the White House. So, I mean, from your perspective, do you think that he's actually going to push for all of these things that he says he's going to do? Or do you think that they're somehow going to find a way to still not give us help despite having a supermajority?
Okay, now, what I found interesting here, and I'm going to be putting comments up, so this is interactive. I like what Kenny had said. I'm glad you enjoy these things on the People's Party. I like watching them. Hook me up with links where I can start following the Patriot Party, because I'd like to cover some other third parties. And I don't think I've even seen them on social media. So if you can, shoot me a Facebook message or something with links that I can start following them. Because I've got something planned coming up on the Unity Party, too, which is a party that started in Colorado that I'm actually pretty friendly with, that I would like to do a mishmash of other third parties, or if I don't have enough for a whole show. And Dave, no, my sister's not ugly, so don't you dare. But, if I get mad at her, I can call her ugly if I want to. So what was interesting here on the... what they were saying is just their utter disappointment. Their utter disappointment and the fact that now what I'm going to say next isn't commendable. Well, I don't know. Maybe it is commendable. They look what utter scorn on bipartisanship. They basically are, you have the power, use it. You got the Senate, you got the House, and you got the Senate because the Republicans just screwed the pooch. And did you see that screenshot? Oh, I should have played it. Did you see what the Tea Party Republicans were blaming the Georgia loss on? what was it, astroturfing libertarians. And they had a list of why they lost, and there was like 10 items on it. And you want to know what was last? Their own attitude. Yeah, okay. Blame it on the astroturfing libertarians. Get used to it, buddy. I'm glad we spoiled your race. No matter which of the two duopoly candidates win, I can always say I'm glad your shitty candidate lost. So, yeah, they're just totally scoffing at bipartisanship. And I'm not really sure how I feel about that. Like, the peacemaker in me is kind of like... But then again, the anarchist in me is like, it's all illegitimate anyway, so whatever. But I'm thinking, like, if the libertarians were in power, I don't think we would want to be, quote-unquote, working with people who wanted to commit aggression, would we? So, you know, maybe they do have the right attitude. I guess what shocked me is they have the balls to say it. I've forgotten how wimpy we've become. And they get me fired up. Because I see these people are on fire for socialism. And we can't be on fire for liberty?
Okay, well, I don't know if you know this, but Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, and Pence all attended church services with Joe Biden before the inauguration. And so I think now America knows we're together in the house of the Lord, and they're already reaching across the aisle to unite this country that was so devastated and divided by President Trump. I think, of course, they're going to get so much done in the first 100 days. It is obvious. I mean, now they have Mitch McConnell on their side now. Because did you see that picture yesterday with Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer?
Chuck Schumer?
Smiling.
Like, what the fuck are you laughing about?
And you know what's interesting is no Democrat is talking about Medicare for all. No Democrat is talking for Medicare for all.
Yeah, because you guys got played. Annalise reminds me of me a little bit. She gets a little salty in the language and very animated, like the socialist me. But, yeah. And that lady who looks like Fran Drescher but doesn't have the voice, that's the producer for the Jimmy Dore show. And she's very animated as well. But they know they got played, but their eyes weren't blinded anyway. They knew that all along that they got played. They were never excited about Biden. And you know, I respect that they're not carrying the water. Like, I did that critique of Jimmy Snow the other day, and he's more in line with, like, their philosophy, but he's all rah-rah Biden and, yeah, carry that water, Jimmy. I have zero respect for that. That's so cowardly.
And so I think they will, I mean, we're already seeing just tones of the idea of censorship and squashing dissenting voices. I mean, personally, you know, the people that were at the Capitol 2 weeks ago, that what they were doing is startling. It's so provocative. And what they've decided to do about those people would be shut them down from all access to social media. And they think that squelching that voice and censoring these dissenting voices, no matter how ugly or vile or whatever they're saying, I'd rather hear about it. I'd rather be able to have it available for me. Let's just say, just as a sociologist, that I would like to know the sociology of these people.
Okay. Again, these people are having more guts than the Libertarian Party. We sent out that hysterical email about Mr. Bullhorn guy, the guy with the horns. The village people doing an insurrection and buying into the hysteria without really doubling down on the censorship and the freedom of speech aspect. and, you know, prancing around autistically screeching, but it's a private business. The socialists got it right, and we got it wrong. I'll give that for them. They are totally anti-censorship. So when it comes to like classical liberalism, they got it down. We don't.
Come on. It's you know, we talked before the show about these the people, you know, it was Brian Stelter's show on CNN speaking to Alex Stamos, I believe, and Alex Stamos, who was the chief cybersecurity expert at Facebook, and stepped down. Now he's doing his own cybersecurity firm. And he was out there the other day sharing how we must really consider that there are voices on the internet get larger viewing audiences than CNN right now, and we need to be worried about that.
Yeah.
Well, commercial television networks, commercial networks are going to compete with independent voices, and this guy is going, let's squash them. Let's squash them. No wonder the guy is having a cybersecurity firm. He wants to squash everybody. What kind of money is that guy gonna make?
They get it. We don't get it. They get it. Why aren't we saying this? Why isn't the LNC saying this? What they understand and they'll talk about is that they know they're a minority party. And they know that what is being done to the Trump supporters could be done to them. They understand the lesson, that truism that goes around, you know, that when they came for X, I didn't say anything because I wasn't a member of X. And when they came for Y, but when they come for you, there'll be nobody left to say anything. We've got a yellow stripe up our back as a national party. I guess I'm wearing the right color jacket, right? It's crazy. I love them on censorship. They've got it right on. And it's two women that got balls than most of the men that are talking about this. And she's right. It's all about the money. It's all about the money. Now, Justin asked a question here. Do the commies, and they're really more socialists, I call them commies to be, I'm kind of being a bit over the top, but have any caucuses that lead to endless infighting? Yeah, they do. And the reason I titled this episode Trouble in Paradise, at the end, we're going to get some laughs. We're going to get some laughs because their perfect commie paradise has a snake in the garden. You'll see. The very last clip. This will keep you around. So, yeah, here we go.
Something
Oh, you know, I'm going to interrupt you because I'm going to ask, because we're all brown people here right now, okay? I'm going to ask you the brown person question, okay? And I asked Annalise this earlier, but, you know, did either one of you have a feeling of pride or any sense of, okay, we got a little further here in the political stratosphere having Kamala Harris as vice president? Did that do anything to you? I don't care what your answer is. I'm fine. I'm just curious.
So my answer to that was, I can acknowledge that it's historic, but do I feel pride? No, because I know who she is. So while I can acknowledge the historic nature of it, her as a person, she's not a good person. So no, I don't feel pride that she's my VP.
Yeah, I definitely have mixed feelings about it. You know, it is a milestone for, you know, women of color in this country to get to, you know, one of the highest positions of power. Definitely acknowledge that, but I agree. You know, she came from a background that's not too clean, and I'm not too sure that I can hold, you know, my faith in what she's going to do for this country. So I feel the same way I felt yesterday. You know, the way I look at today's events, and I feel the same way I felt when the ball dropped on New Year's Eve. You know, it's like, you know, every year everybody thinks that it's going to change just by it being the next day or the next year. But no, I feel like we're going to still have an uphill climb and a very hard battle to get to where we need to be in this country.
Yeah, that's so
Yes, and you know, And we have to make sure that people aren't using those identity politics to keep us away from challenging them and pushing them towards, forcing the vote for Medicare for all, forcing the vote for a guaranteed income, forcing a vote to, I'm curious, how this is going to work out.
Okay. The African American gentleman there, if you don't know who he is, he's the guy who got fired from Amazon for protesting that they didn't have enough PPE, and he's now trying to unionize Amazon, if you didn't know who he was. So that's why he was on that show. Yeah, and they said their true feelings about Kamala Harris. We won't do it. I mean, I will. But when I say we, I mean the collective we. And I don't say these things about the LP, obviously, out of any kind of malice. I say it because I love the party and I want us to be better. And I don't want these people to eat our lunch. And I've had people come to me who've watched a few of my shows and said, you're right. You are right. You have your finger on the pulse here, that if we don't get our shit together, we're looking at the next third largest political party. You know what? I'm telling you, I hope I'm wrong. But as I said before, I have very good political instincts. And I have good political instincts to my absolute fucking horror because I hate politics. And it makes me feel gross that I have good instincts in something I absolutely despise. So I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am.
And what they wanted to do with this type of show is they wanted to demonize passion. They want to demonize language, which leads to AOC saying, hey, you know what? We need to reconsider these people with these platforms and having this freedom to say these things. Do we? Who's we? Who's we?
Who is we? I love her. I mean, she's a socialist, but yeah, who is the we? And here's the funny thing. Out of the electeds that are there, AOC is the closest to them. And there's still no sacred cow. They go after her. Meanwhile, I say Weld is a fucking lion snake, which she is, and libertarians go after me and I ain't even a libertarian anymore. See, they get me fired up, man.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you see a reason, why the People's Party is so necessary in Biden's inauguration speech, in everything that's happened today. What you saw today essentially was the Democratic Party and Biden doubling down on zero analysis and zero introspection about why it is that people elected Trump in the first place. Why is it that people are so desperate that they stormed the Capitol? In 2016, the Democratic Party didn't reconcile with that at all. It just dismissed, tens of millions of Americans essentially as racist, including millions who had voted for Obama previously, wrote them off. Obviously, there are racist factions among Trump supporters, but you can't dismiss everybody's motives in that way.
Why can't we talk like that? They're right. They are right to say people have real grievances. You can't just dismiss all of those people that were at the Capitol as a bunch of white supremacist nutbags. You have to have some introspection. What did we do? We just dismissed them. They're on the ball on that. Okay? Of course they make me throw up in my mouth over their commie stuff. But on that, they're right. You can't just dismiss these people. They have more human empathy for the hurts of other people than we do as libertarians. And that's sad because I believe our philosophy is the most humanitarian, that actually respects the dignity of every person. But we've gone with the flow. We don't want anyone to look down on us like they don't already. As I said, the statists are going to hate us. Who cares? No matter how much we toe the corporate line and play nice, that isn't going to get us anywhere. They're still not going to like us. And then we're not even going to get the people who would like us. We get nothing. We get absolutely nothing. You know, as I'm going to say, if we're going to be a whore, get paid. You know, let's go for it, girl. That's, you know, there's no shame in that. But, you know, if you're going to do it, get the coin. We're whoring out and not even getting paid.
And that's a strategic thing that you're doing. Nick, can you just explain it to me, what you're doing as far as getting access and ballots and why that's so important? What does that strategy look like?
We have to, in order to get to become a major party, you have to register in 50 states, state parties. And that's a process of collecting thousands or in some cases, tens of thousands of signatures in each state. And that sounds daunting until you consider the fact that the Green Party, with a meager amount of resources annually, is able to do that in virtually every state. And the Libertarian Party has been able to do it in 2016 and 2020 in every state.
I'm glad he didn't say us with meager resources, and I'm glad we got recognized. You know, so now they're getting into the issues of the difficulties. They realize what they're up against. So I just thought you'd enjoy that little tidbit. And they're going to talk about that. They're going to talk about them some more, and they're going to talk about their strategy. But he's wrong on the Green Party. It has not been virtually all the states. What was it last time? 30, maybe 32. I think it might have been 28 last time. That's not virtually all. That's barely half. So he's exaggerating on the Green Party side. Maybe he really doesn't know. You know, you can't know the absolute details about everything, but he certainly know what we had done, which makes me think they have their eye on the prize. Yep, they do.
Yeah, thank you for having me here.
Howdy,
I
Graham.
apologize. It's nice to see everybody. I had a dentist appointment that, thanks to our great healthcare system, I just had to pay cash for. So that was exciting. Really, yeah. I don't have dental insurance, so I just had to pay cash. They're very nice. They provide great service, but I had to go out of pocket on this to the tune of $230 some for X-rays, and I got to come back for another $100 on a cleaning. So
The system's working.
That was the most ridiculous clip I've ever seen. You had to pay for a service. The shock of it. I bet you had to pay that day for groceries and for gas and for a number of other things. So what is so fucking outrageous about having to pay the dentist? Why is that all of a sudden outrageous? And I'm sorry, $230 is not a big dentist bill. And then you go, the system's broke because you had to pay a professional? Would you say that about anything else? You're paying Zoom for this Zoom call. Oh my God. Oh, the capitalism I had to pay to talk to people. That was the dumbest portion you're going to hear tonight. That was just stupid. I hope some of those people are watching this, because I need a brain transplant after hearing that.
We were joined, in fact, last month by the chair of the Colorado Democratic Progressive Democrats of Colorado, Mike McCorkle. He left the Democratic Party, a big defection from them, joined us, and he's now working with us and helping to plan out ballot access.
Okay, and I wanted to add some of the comments here. Yeah, like, it was so weird. I thought when I first started listening to that he was going to say he had to pay $200 and something, and he had insurance and still had to pay it. But he didn't have insurance. So what's the big shock? What's the big shock about having to pay for something, you know? And yeah, Jean had a good point that maybe I need to take my own advice. Maybe I need to be more empathetic. I just thought that was ridiculous. You know, some of the socialist talking points I just find are really ridiculous. But I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I get you. I got you. I'm picking up what you're throwing down, Jean. But really, I know some people. Listen, the last time. And I have dental insurance and I have Aflac. And I forgot what I've put dentists through college. But can I bitch about that? Not really. I spent my whole youth drinking sugared soda. It's lucky that I still have any teeth. You know, so I don't know. I'm reaping what I sowed, which is one reason I got the Aflac too. So, man, over the past 10 years, I've probably had $15,000 worth of dental work and maybe $1,000 out of pocket between insurance and Aflac. If it was just insurance, it'd be a lot more because dental insurance is cheap, but it also doesn't cover much. My dental insurance is like $15 a month. And then I think it covers like 40% or something. But my Aflac is way better, but Aflac's expensive. But I get more out of coverage out of Aflac each year than I pay into it, at least for dental. They make money for me on other things, but, you know. Anyway, and college graduate asked, didn't Nazi... I don't know if they did. If anyone knows the answer to that, I mean, they were a type of socialism. I mean, it's not really the type of socialism we're familiar with, but... because it was like a far-right socialism. It's kind of weird. They might have, at least for the Aryans, right? And that just listen, we were watching, Wayne and I were watching a special on the Nazis the other day. And what I don't get, you know, they had this ideal, you know, blonde, blue-eyed Aryan. You know, how did Hitler get away with preaching that when he was not a fine specimen of a man, you know? Like, he wasn't blonde or blue-eyed or particularly impressive. Don't you find that ironic, you know, that he was preaching this, but meanwhile, it was like, if he lived today, he'd be an incel. I mean, let's just face it. And there's something else here. I wanted to pull up a couple more comments here with Jean. You know, libertarian empathy is something I've been talking about a lot lately. And I'm doing a presentation at the Pennsylvania Convention. If anyone can go to it, I'm doing it with Thomas Quitter. Or is his last name pronounced Quitter? I always forget. Anyone who goes to conventions know him. He's a gentleman. He's in it. He's so dynamic. He's a candidate, but he's in a wheelchair. And him and I, or is it me? No, him and I are going to, speaking of Nazis, I'm being a grammar Nazi, we're going to be giving a presentation at the Pennsylvania Convention about libertarian solutions to people with disabilities. And we're going to be dealing with the two sides of disabilities. It's going to be the visible disabilities, like the obvious ones. He's in a wheelchair. But it's also going to be dealing with invisible disabilities. Some of you who are watching might not know, I have autism. And it does cause me a lot of problems in life, but you can't see that I have that, obviously. Like, you can't look at me and go, oh, you know, it's not like I'm blind or I'm missing a leg. And there's different challenges. And there's different ways that you get treated in the Libertarian Party as well. So that's going to be very much about empathy and things of that sort. So if you're interested in that, you can make it to the Pennsylvania convention. And Kaylin had said it's easier to speak with a red-pilled leftist than with a blue-pilled libertarian. That's probably true. I don't really care for the pill language. I've said that before, mostly because I don't watch any libertarian content, as you can tell by all these clips that I play, not just on this episode, but all of them. I watch people I disagree with. It makes me grow. if I want to hear people I agree with, I could just go on Facebook, right? So I watch people I disagree with, and I watch a lot of MGTOW content. And watching enough of them and the incels will just really just make you want to go with the pill language. So I realize that's not anyone's fault here. It's just if you watch enough MGTOWs, you just really want to just stick your head in a boiling vat of oil or something. Okay, so let's continue.
If everyone's a domestic terrorist, the Sunrise Movement could be a domestic terrorist. Chris Smalls could be considered a domestic terrorist because he, is threatening Jeff Bezos's, $200+ billion. So we need now more than ever a free and independent media.
They nailed it. And I don't know if you could really get that from that clip. I know sometimes I pull these clips out and it's hard to get the whole context. He's basically saying that when you cheer on this demonization of people you disagree with and labeling them as terrorists, if anything can be a terrorist, you can be a terrorist. We as libertarians should know that of all things. We're now, at least some libertarians, we're on the watch list. Like, we're on the list of people that could be considered terrorists. It says right on there, libertarians. I did a show on it. I can't remember the guy's name. Listen, I'm such a lightweight that I've almost drunk a whole beer and now my memory's going. I'll probably get more fun as the night goes on. I should go get another beer. But yeah, it's true. Be careful. What someone might end up doing to your enemy if you don't examine it carefully, realize they can do it to you. And we need to realize that really as libertarians. Brennan, that dude, he is the one who was saying that put us on a terrorist list. Now, I haven't seen the written memo, and I've only heard what he said, and you can't hear the capitalization. So I don't know if in the memo it just says small L libertarian, or if it says big L. I don't know. Not that it really makes that big of a difference because we'd be included either way. It just would be more specific if it was big L. I know for a fact I'm on a list. Like, I wouldn't be surprised one day if I try to fly and all of a sudden I can't. Everyone on the LNC is on a list, and I'm probably at the top of the list because I'm not being tame, and I say shit on Twitter that sometimes, I have to go, just kidding, NSA. All righty.
Joe Biden could do an executive order to give the to help everybody. He could do an executive order, and he doesn't need any kind of bipartisan, right? He doesn't need that, right?
That's right. It was actually done in Libby, Montana, as part of the ACA in 2010. There is the one place in the United States, a small town of about 3,000 people, has Medicare for all. Every citizen has Medicare for all. It was in response to an environmental catastrophe, and Senator Max Baucus included it in the ACA, a provision to it's in the Social Security Act to be able to extend it. It's called Section 1881A, and so Joe Biden could. Today, he's signing these executive orders. He could today extend Medicare for all to every American in the country using coronavirus as the environmental disaster that has struck the country right now. And every single day that he doesn't do that, he is consigning millions of people, condemning them to enormous suffering in the only country in the world that doesn't guarantee healthcare as a human right. And every day, I will go further, that the progressives in Congress do not demand that he does that, then they are participating in that as well. They need to build that demand because he doesn't need Congress. He doesn't need the corporatists, the blue dogs that they're going to point to, that they're going to say, oh, they're the obstruction, the reason we can't get Medicare for all. You don't need any of those people. Joe Biden himself can expand Medicare for all to every American in the country. And it is incumbent upon every progressive in Congress to demand that he does that. Force the executive action.
Now, here's where I'm going to stop complimenting them. They really recognized the problem with tyranny and other things, yet they're advocating that Joe Biden, just as this is terrifying, just as an executive order, sign in Medicare for all under the pretense of Corona, because it had been done in one small town that had an environmental disaster. You realize how freaking horrifying that is? That, A, it's horrifying that they're advocating that and don't realize the lessons that they so clearly knew. They realize that probably after Biden, there's going to be a worse than Trump. Do they really want the precedent of the president just doing these sweeping executive orders? What a shitload of authoritarian brown shirt motherfuckery, man. Wow. That is horrifying. And I don't even know exactly if it's true, but they obviously think it is. Can you imagine? I think that would be a quick trip to civil war if Biden did that. And I don't think it will happen. Like, Biden wouldn't do that. But them, like, saying he should, woof. Man, let that sink in. The first time I heard that, my jaw dropped. I was kind of like, what? Excuse me? Woof. What happened to the balance of powers? Man, that just really, I'm shooketh.
I want to jump in really quick on this, Nick, because as we all know, okay, we all here supported Force the Vote. And I want to touch on Ryan Grimm and the slanderous attack that he threw at the People's Party. And I want, Nick, you to answer this first, and then you guys can jump in and let us know how you feel about it. It pissed me off so much, I had to do an unscheduled episode of the Annalise Show just to say, listen, you douchebag, because I couldn't take it anymore. And it's like, first of all, the fact that he called the Force the Vote, he called it the Force the Vote thing, which maybe it's just me, but to me that was so dismissive and that was just so rude. And then he's talking about how we were plotting like in a nefarious way to make people believe that Democrats are sellouts, when that's actually a fact. And I had to be like, do you mean exposing? Is that the word you're looking for? Exposing that they're sellouts? Like, we're not trying to convince people, we're exposing that they're sellouts.
Okay. Now I'm going to get back to, like, playing nice with them. What they're experiencing from the Democrats is what we experience all the time from the Republicans. And actually it has more legitimacy, or legitimacy isn't the right word, but more understanding coming from the Democrats. Like, the Republicans will blame us all the time for spoiling, you know. And I go, cry, I don't care. But the thing is, it's false. We pull pretty equally. Slightly more from the right. The last time was really any statistics on it, I think it was like 60-40. But it's not like solely from the right. But these folks are going to be pulling solely from the left. But the left's attacking them the way the Republicans attack us. They're already getting you're going to be a spoiler, how dare you, you're going to be throwing the election to the white supremacists or whatever the names are. You know, so I'm just like, I'm empathizing with them here because I get it. So the Democrat shills are coming for him. They're coming for him. Let me put this up here. So Gene is suggesting I check that out. I'll try to remember that. I don't watch TV. I only watch YouTube because I'm in front of my computer all day. So all I do is, but I haven't been watching much lately because I have a backlog of clips to go through and I want to do all the clips before I just bury myself. I got some Ben Shapiro shit I want to do, and that thing on anorexia, believe it or not. So, and I want to do one on, because people have asked me, I on issues with late diagnosis of autism, and I'm going to give like my personal story on that as well. So, yep, let's continue.
So, I mean, what is the People's Party going to do to ensure that whatever candidate they run for president in 2024 is, number one, actually willing to fight and not just talking a good game? And number two, actually willing to stand up for our rights, including saying, even if I don't agree with this person, they have a right to free speech.
In the Democratic Party, the platform is a joke. Like, we all know it. You know, they don't adhere to it whatsoever. In fact, in 2017, a year after passing the platform at the 2016 convention, the Democrats came out with basically a new platform. It was called like a better deal. Remember that? And they just basically ignored the other platform passed by their own delegates. And so that has to change. You know, in the People's Party, our candidates will be accountable to the platform. They will be accountable to the party and to the membership of the party to actually represent those interests.
Okay, that's interesting. I'd like to see how they're going to do that with their bylaws. Because we thought we were going to do that. Allegedly, we hold our candidates accountable, but we don't. But we don't. Because there's too much to lose. Let me give you an example. So our bylaws say, and I should have had the quote up here, but it basically says that the Libertarian National Committee shall respect the decision of the delegates in choosing who the nominees are, as long as they are in compliance with our platform. Nobody honestly here, unless you're crossing your fingers behind your back, can say that Gary Johnson, who I adore because he's a cutie pie, and Bill Weld, who I despise because he's a lion snake, adhered to our platform. By all rights, the LNC could have removed them as our candidates. And in a perfect world, we would have, according to our bylaws. But the damage to the party would have been too big. So the bylaws could say whatever they want to say. But if the fallout and the damage to ballot access and everything else would be too big, it doesn't matter. It's just words on paper. There won't be the political will to do it. And I'm saying that I was on the LNC at that time, and I definitely would not have voted to disqualify our candidates. It wasn't in the best interest of the party, no matter what the bylaws said there. The delegates knew what they were buying. It had been different if those two lied, but everyone knew what they stood for, and they voted for them. So in my view, that's what they did. You know, what can you do? It had been different again if they were lied to, but they weren't. And that's who they wanted. And the delegates are going to do what the delegates are going to do. So I'm going to say the same with these guys. How are they going to force compliance with their platform? I'm really dying to see their bylaws. They haven't had their first convention yet. Really, really want to see their bylaws. Because our bylaws are pretty strong. But you know, Dave Smith says this all the time. The laws are one thing, and the laws say what the laws say, but if there isn't political will to enforce the laws, it doesn't matter. You know how many people get away with so much shit because there isn't political will? So, yeah, this is where the trouble in paradise is starting to come, because they can say that, but we know better, don't we? There's only so much you can do unless they're going to turn into a super authoritarian party. And I've seen third parties try to start that way, and they won't last. And you'll see at the last clip where this is starting to go wrong. Yeah. Here we go. And we're getting there. This is the best part now. We're starting to get into things that you guys will be able to directly relate to the problems that the LP has. You'll see that they're starting to have the same problems.
The last question was, I know the Jimmy Dore Show has been a longtime proponent of a general strike. Do you think now is the time to do that?
I think now's the time to organize it. I think there's organizations that are in lockstep with that. I think that whatever the Jimmy Dore show, I'm sure everybody here on the show would, however we can get the word out on these events that are taking place, you know, we certainly want to continue to support it. And I just, I hope they listen to these general strikes, because this is the beginning. You know, we already saw what can happen with chaos. And I think these general strikes are meaningful.
Yeah, I didn't even want to include that clip, actually. But since it was there, let me discuss it. They were like calling for like a nationwide strike. It ain't gonna happen. I mean, it's an interesting idea, but that's what that's about, where they were just really encouraging that. That's something I guess Jimmy Dore was really promoting. And I meant to cut that clip out because it wasn't really relevant to everything else. But I'm going to use this opportunity here. I want to put up this comment from Keep Arkansas Legal. It says, cut the funding to whoever ignores the platform or doesn't really campaign. Use those funds for candidates who adhere to the platform and actually try to do a decent campaign. I'm going to do some... I've been in the sausage factory now for... At the end of this term on the LNC, it'll be my 6th year. I can't believe it. And before I got in the LNC, I didn't know how things worked. And most party members don't. The LNC and the National Party doesn't fund the candidates whatsoever. We don't provide any funds to the candidates. The candidates are all self-funded. They do their own fundraising. There's no purse strings to cut. I had somebody earlier today, I think it was in the Mises Caucus group, who like said we were hoarding money for a feudal 2024 campaign when we could be doing things to get more public exposure now, like maybe supporting small businesses or something. No, we don't have any money we put aside for that. Every once in a while, a local candidate might get a $5,000 check, maybe. But we don't fund the presidential and vice presidential candidates. And I know that's a surprise. And I don't really know how the Democrats and Republicans do it. But this is the same throughout all the third parties. So there's the only power we have is to say we can take away your nomination. There's no other power that the National Party has. And most party members don't realize that. So a lot of their frustration with the National Party is misplaced in that sense, because we don't have that power. So that might be news to some people. It certainly would have been news to me before I was actually on the LNC.
Same thing with Medicare for all, more than 72%. Same thing for getting, for guaranteeing college, free public college. That also has enormous majorities. Same thing for a Green New Deal. And a lot of these policies have super majority support. And so those are the kinds of things that we will be running on, because there is no excuse. This is supposed to be a democracy, right? In a democracy, what the people want is supposed to happen. Well, that's not happening. The people overwhelmingly want these things.
No, they don't. I don't know what fantasy world he is in. We had a lot of very quote unquote progressive socialized medicine bills come through Colorado, and Colorado's pretty progressive right now, and it didn't pass. And his fantasy world of a supermajority, it doesn't exist. He's in an echo chamber there. And I will repeat back to him what Steph, the host, the producer for the Jimmy Dore show said. Who is this people you're speaking of? Who is this we? I don't consent. Just because 51 of you say the other 49 can get raped, that don't make it right, no matter how horny you might be.
Don't listen to anybody who says that you want a handout. You're a taxpayer. It's your money. Okay. And we really have to stop the taxation without representation that we're seeing. And that's a big, when I start merch, I'm going to have a taxation without representation shirt. Okay. That's how strongly I feel about this, because you can't tell me that the majority of the country wants these things that every other industrialized nation has, and we're told what we can or cannot do with our own tax dollars while we spend billions and trillions on wars that nobody wants. So we can't continue to allow these politicians to career climb. We can't continue to allow them to steal our tax dollars and enrich themselves while telling us that we can't even have basic things such as healthcare, and we have Americans dying every year because they got sick. So it's disgusting, it's ridiculous, and we need a general strike. I'm so happy that the People's Party is on board for this. I'm so happy that we've got independent media, and I don't give a fuck how much CNN wants to censor us. We won't shut up.
She does remind me of the socialist me. Who is this we you're speaking of, Annalise? Who is this we? You says, don't let people tell you it's a handout. It's your money. Okay, the money you put in is your money. But you don't just want your money, you want my money too. And I'll use your language back at you. Fuck you. You can't have my money. You can have your money. Go ahead. If you were advocating that people should be able to earmark where their stolen money for taxes go, I'd be right behind you, honey. But you're not. You want my money too, and you can kiss my libertarian ass. You ain't getting mine. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. And if there was a majority support, because we do live in that kind of pillage system, it would be here. You guys want it. What's stopping you guys from forming a cooperative and doing it yourself? Oh yeah, that's right. The government won't let you do that. That sucks. But that's the way it should be. If a bunch of people think that they want to have some kind of voluntary community where they all pool resources and provide health care for each of them, there's been Christian organizations that have done that for ages, health share organizations, where you pay a certain amount and you're guaranteed health care. The government cracked down on that. They should be able to do that. They're not addressing the real problem. I get she wants that, and that's great. There's some things I would like to have, but I don't want to force her to pay for it. But I agree with her. I wouldn't say nobody wants these wars. Obviously, some people do. I don't. So maybe a great interim step would be able to earmark our stolen tax dollars, right? Why not? That would be something. But this R and we and all that shit, it's your money? No, it ain't. Whatever you put in is your money. If you want to get paid for medicine at least as much as you put in plus interest, okay. That's kind of how I look at Social Security. I don't think people who are taking their Social Security checks are being unlibertarian, because they're not even getting what they put in. They're not stealing from anybody else. But what she's looking for is theft. Because who's we, don't want it. And she goes, oh, we can't have health care. Yeah, you can. I go to the doctor all the time. You can have health care. That isn't, you don't want to pay for it yourself. You want the state to pay for it. When the fact is it's so expensive, the reason it is now, that you can't afford it. And I agree with you. The state of our health care is abysmal. And the answer isn't to put the government in charge of it. They're the ones who fucked it up to begin with. Why has the price of LASIK gone down? Because there isn't mandated insurance and all that other shit. If the government was involved with boob jobs, they'd be $50,000 rather than, what are they? I don't know. 5, 6. I watch the ads. Anyway. Yeah. She is the socialist me though, isn't she? You gotta admit it.
Thanks, Tiffany. Cool. So yeah, let's jump into some of the Q&A. A lot of good questions in the chat. First one, there's been several similar ones along this line, so I'm just gonna read a few of them. Basically, talking about strategy. What's the road to power? Concerns about going the way of the Green Party, of working for decades but not becoming relevant and getting people elected, you know, a bit about our strategy to establish candidates for on the state level versus and national level. So Nick or Tiffany, would you like to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I can start off, and then maybe Tiffany can fill in anything else. And so, 2022 and 2024, we have a strategy for making sure that we are as successful as a party as possible. The mainstream media, you know, wants very desperately to write us off and to kind of pigeonhole us as like another Green Party because, you know, they've managed to equate the Green Party with kind of being like synonymous with not viable. And so they want to say, oh, look, you know, the People's Party is just like a new iteration of the Green Party, you know. And so already in some of the mainstream media articles that we've had of us in the Washington Post and Politico, they've tried to draw that connection, you know, and obviously that's not the case for reasons that we've talked about. But in order to, you know, strategically ensure that that they cannot portray us that way, and also that, you know, people don't see us that way, that they understand that we are in fact building a major new party. We are not building a third party, so to speak. Is our 2022 strategy and in relation to it, our 2024 strategy. And so in 2022, we want to run enough congressional candidates, about 15, in order to be able to get national party recognition. And so that is required because the FEC requires that you run about that many congressional candidates in different parts of the country to get that recognition. And so that is an objective of ours. Another reason that that's an objective is that 2022 is kind of like a springboard to 2024. And so we want people to see that, in fact, we, coming out of 2022, we want people to say, wow, the People's Party, you know, was able to shatter the illusion of invincibility that the Democrats and the Republicans have. And so we were able to elect members of Congress, you know, to the national legislature, who get the bully pulpit, you know, who don't answer to Pelosi, don't answer to the Democratic Party establishment, they don't answer to the DNC or the DCCC or the RNC. And that is going to give us people who will then be talking at that national stage about the People's Party and showing that, you know, showing that a different kind of politics is different. You know, it is possible. And so we'll have access to that. Access to the bully pulpit will be kind of like our greatest tool going into 2024, and being able to show, yes, see, the People's Party, it is possible, because that will embolden everyone for us to come out in 2022 with victories. And so it's important, given that we make sure that we're running only essentially as many candidates, and really kind of focusing on only as many candidates as we can really push to victory. And so not everyone's going to win, of course, but we want to ensure that there is a decently high percentage of victories, again, so that we can't essentially be ridden off, so that those who would want to write us off, you know, on Wall Street, the corporate parties and the mainstream media are not able to do that coming out of it. Instead, that they are shocked at our success. And then that emboldens people leading up to 2024 and to a presidential campaign at that point. And a successful presidential campaign can create a down ballot effect, whereby at every level of government, from school board to city council to state representative, state senator, you know, up to Congress and Senate, you have a kind of down ballot effect, you know, where people vote for the top of the ticket and they'll vote for everybody else who's a member of that party. And so they'll vote People's Party down the line. And so that's really the political revolution moment, is 2024. 2022 is the springboard, and 2024 is the political revolution. And so in 2022, it's important that we are being very strategic about where we put our resources, not spreading ourselves too thin, which is a mistake that other independent parties have made, and ensuring that we get actual victories coming out of that. And that instead of being people writing us off, they are saying, wow, look at what they did, that succeeded, and now we're on the national stage. You know, maybe even because the Republicans are going to take Democratic seats, maybe even the People's Party would deny the Democrats and the Republicans a majority in the House. Imagine how interesting that would be. And then either of the two major parties would have to go to our representatives in order to get anything passed. Or, as I think we all know would happen, they would begin to collaborate between themselves and expose that the real fissure in American politics, the real axis, is not Democrat versus Republican. It is, in fact, corporate politicians and corporate parties versus everybody else, versus those who represent the people, those who don't take corporate money, which is us. And seeing that collaboration between the two parties will expose them to their basis and to the American people, and show that really they are on the same team as we know. And that will also help propel us in 2024, our presidential candidate, and everybody who's running down ballot at every level in 2024.
My sweet summer child. Oh, you can see the train wreck coming, can't you? Hey, maybe they'll do it. But yeah, I think everyone who is a libertarian was sitting here going, yeah, pass that pipe around. Whatever you're smoking, we want some. Woo. Okay, well, first I want to tell you something surprising that's going to be maybe my next episode. I know that if you ask, has the Libertarian Party ever elected anyone to federal office? The answer is no. We've had Convert, we had Justin Amash. I actually don't agree with that. And in my next historical thing, I'm going to make the argument that we elected someone to the House of Representatives in 1972. So that's a teaser for the next LP time capsule. I'm absolutely convinced of it, and that's going to be my position. But maybe they will elect someone to the House. I don't think they will, but maybe they will in some of these really progressive areas if they split the Democrat vote or something. Who knows? But they think they're going to elect a president in 2024, and I'm telling that dude, listen, there ain't enough drugs in the world for you to really believe that. Plus, again, I'm dying to see their bylaws. How can they, if they have ballot access, keep people from running in races? He's like, we got to be strategic. We can only run certain races. How are you going to stop people from running if they want to run? And how are you going to tell people, I'm just going to make up states here, from the People's Party in Oklahoma that they can't run somebody because you've decided the only races that you're going to concentrate on are in California and Oregon or whatever? What are you going to do to keep the people in Oklahoma excited if you're not allowing them to run any candidates? That's just not how it works. Are their state parties not going to be autonomous? They've kind of painted themselves, and you'll see this come into conflict with the last clip, as this entirely bottom-up organization. And I understand that desire because the LP is supposed to be that way. Not top-down. Yet what he's saying requires top-down control. How are you going to square that circle? It'll be interesting to see.
Where's another one? So you talked a bit about this already, but maybe from a strategy aspect, how are we streamlining our message and platform to appeal to citizens while avoiding infighting and irrelevance? And I can speak brief on that. A few people have had similar questions to this so far, and we're not focusing. We're making sure we don't focus on political identity and are focusing on issues that have broad support, like Medicare for all, like getting money out of politics, like ending foreign wars, things like that. That way we don't get caught up in, political identity, like I'm socialist, I'm progressive, I'm conservative, I'm moderate, this, but rather focusing on the issues that have broad support that we can link arms on. And anybody else like to add anything to that?
I will share some of, for example, what the People's Party, platform could incorporate, and what I imagine it will incorporate, with the things that members have expressed great support for. So getting money out of politics, that's like above 90% support. The basic income in the form of recurring stimulus checks, 82%. Net neutrality, 77%. Universal pre-K, especially important now, with the lack of childcare during the pandemic, also 77%. Raising taxes on the rich, 76. Increasing financial regulation, 75. Ending mandatory minimum sentencing, 72. And so you see that there's a super majority support. All of those issues had more than 75% or more support, and you can go down the line with Medicare for all, 72, legalizing marijuana, 67, Green New Deal, 63, free public college, 62. And so super majority support among the American people, but no representation among the corporate parties. And so that's our platform, is one of super majority support, because the Democrats and Republicans, if this is the spectrum of American political thought of like what the people think, the Democrats and Republicans, they argue here. And then there's this whole other space right here that of what people believe that is right there for us to speak for the people on. So that's how we'll avoid that, that kind of irrelevance, is by running obviously on the things that people believe in and that they need the most.
I know. I'm gonna. Here's your question. Yeah, that was a bit of sleight of hand there, wasn't it? These polls he's talking about, I believe, because he never said, I'm guessing, are polls of their own membership, not polls of the general population. Let's just take one of those numbers. He said there's 63% support for the Green New Deal, and then made that seem like it was of everybody. There isn't 63% support in the general population, or at least the general voting population, for the Green New Deal. Excuse me? There wasn't even that much, not even everyone who voted for Biden supports that, and Biden barely won. None of the Trump people support that. He's too smart to be not knowing what he's doing. So I don't like saying people are lying, but let's just say it's a creative use of facts. Alternative facts, was that the term? It's really, really strange. If those things had that kind of support, they'd already be done. And it's funny, though, where he thinks it's fine, let's just go with that 63% number for the Green New Deal, to force the other 37%. To me, consent is consent. Even if 99 people think you should consent and you're just the one who says no, the no wins. But yeah, he was a flim-flam artist there. And he talks a lot as if a lot of words will paper over that bullshit pie he tried to force us to eat. And it's funny where that one gentleman said, oh, well, we're not focusing on political identity, but then they rattled all the stuff that is a political identity. So, in other words, you're going to be socialist, but not say you're socialist. Okay, I get it. Because everything you said, except for, no foreign wars or things like that, which is just a liberal, and I mean classical liberal ideal. Most everything else was socialist. A rose by any other name is still a rose. I don't care if you call yourself a fucking peanut butter sandwich. You're a socialist. So don't say you're not going to be on political identity. Everyone else is going to call you a socialist. And how are you going to enforce that? A lot of the socialists I know are proudly socialist. It's kind of like if the Libertarian Party said, yeah, we've got anarchists, but we're not going to use that term. Really? I've had people tell me that before. You can't. And funny, Tony Nathan said that in the 1972 convention to the anarchists. You guys need to come up with another term. How well did that work out? It didn't, because you can't tell people what to call themselves. It's flim-flam right there. That was let me give you the technical term for what we just heard. Now, it's very technical. And I don't, we're going to use big words here on this technical term. What we just heard is political bullshit.
Oh, yes, this one. Crucial thing. What can the party do to avoid the gatekeepers that won't allow us to be in the debates? Key hurdle.
And so I imagine that they are referring to the general presidential election debates. We won't, of course, be in the Democratic primary debates, because those will be for Democrats in the presidential race. But we will be, if there are any general election debates, and this applies for congressional races as well, we will, of course, challenge our Democrats or Republicans who are running against to debates and to town halls. And then for the presidency, there is a 15% threshold to be able to get into the presidential debates. And we believe that that is very, very much achievable. And just to give you one example of why, Jesse Ventura, whom there was speculation about him running last year for president, he was polling at 18% without even having announced a campaign, run a single political ad, gone on television talking about it, how he was going to run. A Fox News poll included him, because there had been some speculation about him running, and he was already at that threshold. And so there's an enormous amount of latent support for an independent political party that actually stands for what people believe in. And of course, with all those issues that I listed, that is the position that we'll be running in, and it bears saying, because we should repeat it again and again and again, that a large majority of Americans, 60%, want a major new party. And so anybody can go look that up. There was a poll conducted in September. That is the latest one. It was conducted by the Hill Harris, and you can go and find it. And an even greater share of people of color, African Americans, Latinos, want it as well. An even greater share of working class people want it. People who earn less. A greater share of young people want it. So what do these people have in common? They're the most disadvantaged by the system as it exists. And so that's something that we should always be sharing, is that the large majority of Americans want a major new party. They're demanding it. They don't have confidence that the corporate parties can be reformed. They have seen enough.
Okay, interesting. I can't find that poll where he says, Fox News poll, where he said Jesse Ventura got 18%. I can't find that anywhere. And he's, again, there's some flim-flam here, because it's not just any poll. It's the polls that the Commission on Presidential Debates use. And they pick polls that don't even include the third parties in the questions. It's hard to poll at 15% when your name isn't even included. Now, we've been included on some, but not on all of them. So he's either really ignorant here, or again, one poll in which allegedly Jesse Ventura got 18% is not the national polls that the Presidential Debate Commission uses, or the Libertarian would have been there. And you can challenge the Democrats or whoever. that you're running against in these local races, the debates all you want, they don't show up. We had here, our state chair in Colorado, Victoria Reynolds, was running for county commission, Douglas County Commissioner. And we had a debate all set up. We had the venue, the LP paid for the venue, we paid for the insurance. And then all of a sudden, the Republican candidate, his campaign manager, said, I don't think it's in your best interest to be there. And he pulled out. And once the Democrat heard the Republican wasn't going to be there, she pulled out. You can't make him come to a debate. So, you know, we've been through this. And you could do the empty chair thing. You know, we've done that plenty of times. But when they both won't come, it doesn't get much coverage. You know? So, no, it's not doable. That's just a complete I think, you know, maybe one day we'll get in, but I think more likely is just that the mainstream hold, like like so many people are watching alternative media now that I think what's shown on the major networks is going to become less and less important. And there's going to be a breakthrough of having these alternative candidates on alternative media. So, I don't know. But I feel his pain there, but I don't think he's looking at the situation very, very realistically.
Indeed. So, so had this question a few times. Figure we might answer it live as well. Are there any disgruntled Republicans at the table yet, or what are we doing to reach out to our conservative friends? And you know, how are we reaching out to them at this early stage? So, I'll get started on that answer. I mean, so yeah, a lot of our friends in more rural communities are expressing, you know, reaching out to conservative people, and we are not going to succeed if we don't have many of our conservative friends on board. And, you know, to reiterate something we said earlier, that's why we're focusing on issues as opposed to political identities and the issues that have that widespread support. So didn't know if anybody had anything else they wanted to add to that. I know we kind of covered that a bit earlier.
Conservatives don't support those issues, dude. Like, I don't know if you're talking about conservatives or conservatives. Because no matter what my general feelings are about conservatives, they don't support Medicare for all and all that kind of stuff. They don't support. They even said free. They weren't only saying free college. They wanted free daycare. It's not free. And oh boy, I've already went off on that. But no, you're not going to get conservative buy-in. You're just not. Just deal with it. You're not going to get conservative buy-in. But it was interesting, at least, that they said... The one thing I will say is good and interesting is they're saving their attacks for the Democrats. They really aren't attacking so much conservatives. I think they know already there's going to be a disagreement, and they need to pull in disaffected Democrats.
And so the big news is, of course, we have registered in the most populous state in the country, 5th largest economy in the world, California. Woo! Give it a shout out, everyone. I wish you could see everyone on the panel list here, everyone cheering. So this is super exciting. Obviously, a really big milestone for the People's Party. We are now officially registered in 3 states, Maine, Colorado, and California. And you're going to hear an update from some of our interim officers in California right now, including Edie and Caitlin, and also going to hear from Mike about our progress in Colorado as well, and Tiffany about some of the work that Electoral Strategy is doing in other states. And so in California, very exciting. Obviously, this is a uniquely significant state because it has a different primary system than most of the country. It has a top 2 system, and that is particularly well attuned to our electoral plan and our strategy in running candidates in 2022, in particular for Congress, because it means that we can be, we can run in some of these like heavily gerrymandered Democratic districts, like really deep blue districts where there's an establishment Democrat, but Bernie did really well in 2016 and 2020. And so that it's kind of like ready for new leadership. We can run in those districts. We can beat the Republican, and we can have a Democratic Party, People's Party race in the general election. And that is super exciting. So California, a very significant state to get on the ballot on, or to register in now. The next step in California is that we have to get about 80,000 people registered to the party. That's about 0.3% of the eligible voting population in California. So very doable. There were it was so much fun last night reading through all of the different comments of people on social media that were so excited, that were saying that they just switched their registration to the People's Party. That was really, really heartwarming and really rewarding to see that.
I think that is doable in California. And actually, that's a wise strategy in California. There's top 2 in California. So, yeah, I think they could have some success in 2022 in California because of the top 2. The Democrats are going to rue the day that they supported top 2, because it's going to come to bite them in the ass, and I am going to laugh. That's all I'm going to say, because top 2 sucks. But yeah, he's nailed it there with the top 2. That's probably the one sane thing he said.
Hey, man. Jolly St. Nick, thank you. I knew you always do this. You get me all riled up about the Democrats, and then you call on me, and I got to like be cool and try to be calm and collected here. But you are right. I am actually, I'm serving out, not that I'm counting, but I have 58 days, 13 hours, and about 25 minutes left in my term, in charge of a group in Colorado that is sort of the statewide caucus for progressives in the Democratic Party. And Nick, it makes me so happy to think about the fact that that job won't even exist in the People's Party. We don't need a special group to protect the progressive minority like we do in the Donkey Club.
Damn right. And there won't be no corporate caucus either.
That's right. Well, they can try, but I got my butt kicking foot ready, man. No, I don't think they'll come with us. But yeah, you're right. I mean, and the events that we've seen just in the last 48 hours show us what happens when we have got a duopoly. One party that wishes it was 2015 and another that wishes it was 1520. And there's no party for like today and like looking to the future. And I've had my fill of, I'm not like angry at Democrats, but I've seen too many of my friends sitting there shaking their heads about what choice have we got? We've got to go along. And I'm not doing it anymore. We got to have a choice. So with my brothers and sisters in Colorado, and it's a good little crew in Colorado, love them all. We've been organizing stuff, and we have a petition process to make minor party status in Colorado. One of the ways you can do it is to get 10,000 signatures over the course of about a year. And so I became friends with the petitions director at the elections division of the Secretary of State's office, who I call my dude Jeff, because we got to know each other real well. And Jeff was actually pretty stoked when I called and said that we were forming a new party, because he's like, you don't get to do this kind of petition very often. He's like, I think I've got it here on my computer somewhere. But, you know, he was very excited. And I leaned into that and into the holiday spirit. I told him I needed a Christmas miracle. And we managed to get them to approve our petition form right before the end of the new year. We squeezed it in at the final approval part between Christmas and New Year's Day, because it's a real tricky process. It doesn't just have to be on the long paper, legal size. And I'm a lawyer. I don't use legal size paper. Like, nobody uses that. So you have to get the weird paper, and then it's got to be like 20 pound or 24 pound. It's got to be printed just right. It's got to be 600 dots per inch, which is like twice as much as most people's printers are set on by default, apparently. I learned the hard way. So we had to like print a good template of these and then send it back to the Secretary of State's office, get confirmation that we were doing it right. Got all that stuff done so that on New Year's Day, me and Malin and Sarah Rose, who I think many of you have seen before, a whole bunch of us got together at the Patterson Inn in Denver, Colorado. It's a really cool old property. It's supposedly haunted. So we didn't go inside. We stayed outside in the courtyard where it was safe for COVID. And back in 1877, the owner of that home, Thomas Patterson, he was Colorado's first member of Congress, first member of the US Senate a few years later. So this is a property that it's kind of the center of the progressive universe out in Colorado. It's kind of where it all began. And that's where the owner was so happy to have us come and start the People's Party at his property and add another chapter to the history of that old place, a beautiful old place. So we met up on the morning of New Year's Eve, not wasting a single day. And we had a quick training, handed out petitions. And folks like Malin and Sarah and many others have already taken petitions out. And we've had people taking them out to events and beginning to gather the petitions. We are officially on the way. So, you know, I've been jealous about Maine being all colored in on the big map on the website. You know, I got to see a big orange rectangle, and make sure you get the right one. Don't be coloring in Wyoming. It's the rectangle to the north of us. Like, get the right one. But I want to see us colored in on that map too, because we are on our way. And by this time next year, I expect that we will have people affiliating with the People's Party in Colorado. And in about 15 months, I expect us to be nominating our first candidates for Congress. And I think we've talked before how that is part of the plan and the process to get us to national party recognition and a successful presidential run in 2024. So yeah, it's been exciting. Like I haven't had a Christmas vacation with this much excitement in a long, long time. It's been very cool.
Yeah, so they're very active in Colorado. But no, the Patterson Inn is not the center of the progressive universe in Colorado. It's Boulder. We want Boulder to secede and become part of California. And something you might have noticed there, they've claimed their color, which is orange. So we have yellow, you got the blue, you got the red, and now you've got the orange. And I see Nathaniel asked what top 2 is, and I kind of just assumed, and I assumed wrongly. So let me put this up on the screen here. I pulled it up on Ballotpedia while we were waiting. So a top 2 primary is a type of primary where all the candidates are listed on one ballot, and the top 2 vote getters, regardless of their party, advance to the general election. So in highly gerrymandered Democratic districts like he was talking about, Nick Brana was talking about in California, it's usually 2 Democrats that proceed to the general election. So the Republicans don't even bother to come out to vote in the general election because there's 2 Democrats. It's a totally screwed up system. And they will upset that, though, for the Democrats in a top 2. So, yeah, I would really recommend, if you wanted to know more, to look this up on Ballotpedia. But that's basically what's going on. And you can look, there's only 3 states. I think it's Nebraska, California, and Washington, if I'm correct. Let's, yeah. Those are the states that have a top 2. There are other kinds of, like, jungle primaries that operate a little bit differently, but strict top 2 is those 3 states. And, yeah, and that's what California has. And they can upset in a top 2. So now how do there we go. I hadn't done that in a while. So yeah, Nathaniel, when you're in a state that doesn't do that, it was like kind of freaky for me to learn that there are states that don't have partisan registration. I've only lived in Florida and Colorado, and we've both had partisan registration, but I think there's like 15 states that you don't register with a party. All right, so yep, we're continuing here.
Thanks, Carol. Yes, it was very exciting to get all of this different coverage for the advisory council, and also thrilling to get so many amazing people on it. I mean, we have poets, artists, students, labor organizers, scientists, activists, nonprofit leaders, academics, authors, athletes, lawyers, comedians, actors, commentators, and elected officials all represented on it. And so it's a really amazing, diverse group of people. And for anyone who may not have seen it yet, I want to, in fact, share it with you all. Here are the folks. A bunch of you'll recognize some folks who spoke at the People's Convention, such as Amaya Wangeshi, the former Bernie 2020 high school director. Also, we have Chase Iron Eyes. We've got Cheng Sem Lim, who actually helped get the endorsement of healthcare for all in Los Angeles for Force the Vote with us. A bunch of different organizations ended up endorsing Force the Vote: Whole Washington, Health Over Profit, Our Revolution in Wisconsin, Nevada, Washington, and Socialist Alternative. We have Chris Smalls as well with us, who everybody knows took on Amazon, became a real David and Goliath hero after being fired by Amazon for demanding basic measures to protect against COVID for his fellow workers at a plant in New York. Dr. Cornel West, the Harvard professor, and one of the greatest philosophers of our time. Such an honor to have his support. Eleanor Goldfield, the poet, host of Art Killing Apathy. Annalise Garcia, host of The Annalise Show. Jimmy Dore, whom everybody knows. Justin Jackson, the NFL running back with the LA Chargers. He was also the one who helped break open the conversation about Force the Vote when AOC responded to him and they had a tweet exchange about forcing the vote. Thrilled to have him on board with us. Caitlin Sapasi Belknap, who all of you will know. She is the head of Move to Amend, which is the organization that has been working for 10 years to get a constitutional amendment to get corporate money out of our politics and end corporate personhood. And so thrilled to be working with her as well. Maybe a Girl, who is the first elected drag queen in the United States. She is a city councilwoman. Medea Benjamin, one of the most fantastic activists in the United States. Thankfully, I'm fortunate enough to live near her and consider her a friend here in the DC area. A co-founder of Code Pink. Who's this guy who you just heard from? Mike McCorkle, who was, of course, the former chair of the Progressive Democrats in Colorado. Representative Mike Sylvester, who contacted us almost immediately after we filed for the party in Maine, and was interested in working with us. And thankfully, we've managed to work with him since then, and he's joined our advisory council since then. And I know he's doing great work in Maine. He was DSA's first elected representative, and also helps to lead an organization of other DSA electeds. And so thrilled to be working with him. Omar Fernandez, who spoke at the People's Convention. He is the president of the American Postal Workers Union in Vermont, and also an AFL-CIO executive council member in Vermont. Dr. Peter Kalmus, the climate scientist, recipient of the Early Career Award at NASA, also hosting the climate edition of the People's Podcast with us. First episode, which was last month. Ron Placone, who you all know, Rose McGowan, and Ryan Knight, and Susan Sarandon. And so really an amazing group of people that we have with us. We're thrilled to have all of their support. We're thrilled to have them reaching out for us. And it has already helped us kind of go to warp speed. And so very grateful for all of the help that they're all putting into, and all of the work that they're all putting in to building the People's Party in the US.
Okay, this is where the controversy is going to start to come in about this advisory council that we're leading up to. There's going to be a few other clips. We're nearing the end here because I hadn't covered them in a couple months, so I had a lot of ground to cover. But that's interesting. They got this stable of celebrities, and Susan Sarandon there on the end. She was tweeting criticizing Biden the other day, but I'm like, of course, you're already on the advisory council of a competing party. So yeah, just wanted you to get a feel for that of what they're doing. And I think that's a smart move. It's like having the celebrity board of directors that a lot of companies do.
And of course, for exposing the fact that we don't need foreign powers to rig American elections. The Democrats are perfectly capable of doing it themselves, and they consider that their role. Julian Assange, of course, having exposed the DNC's role in rigging an American election in 2016, the Democratic primary against Bernie Sanders. The first time it was rigged against him, the second being last year.
See? I guess it's just fine. It's only when, listen, I don't think the last election was rigged, to be honest with you. But I also think the hysteria against people who think it is just fucking ridiculous. Because the Democrats are known riggers against Bernie. That's a known fact. There's just no disputing that.
All right. Thanks, Nick. Let me see if I can find a few. Hold on. I had one lined up. How about the idea that we would split the Democratic vote and help the Republicans? Mm-hmm. How do you what's your response or thoughts on that? The spoiler effect.
What's the fucking difference between them? The Democrats or the Republicans, it's your choice of Democrat or Republican denies you health care. It's your choice of Democrat or Republican who destroys the climate and makes an unlivable planet. It's your choice of Democrat or Republican to deny you labor rights, to enforce mass incarceration, endless war, surveillance, state apparatus. What does it matter? It's just degrees of horrible is what we're talking about. And the fact that we have the Democrats and Republicans over time is actually is leading the country further and further and further to the right over time. That is how you have this march towards enormous inequality and austerity policies, and you have exploding student debt and 1 out of every 10 Americans that's facing eviction in the middle of a pandemic, and you have tens of millions of people, 15 million people who are losing their health insurance. And you have, and this is after Obama's signature achievement was passing Romney Care. So, this is actually facilitating the move to the right. And in 2024, if you understand, as we do here at the Movement for a People's Party, that Trump was a reaction to Obama's corporatism, well, guess what? Biden is more corporate than Obama. And people are more desperate and they are more impoverished than they were during Obama's term. And so the counter reaction to Biden is going to be fascism. And you saw that on display yesterday. And you saw that on display with Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley and the other senators and members of Congress who even after that kind of invasion of the Capitol still voted to contest the election results and the affirmation of Biden. They are lining themselves up as the inheritors of the Republican Party. And the Democrats and the Republicans are trying to basically expunge Trump from the party and remove him entirely. But guess what? That may lead Trump to form something like a third party. There's talk about that accelerating in the right. And so either way that you cut it in 2022, now that the Democrats have full control and they have no one else to blame, when they enforce neoliberalism on people for 2 years, they're going to get destroyed in 2022. And then they're going to get destroyed in 2024. And we're going to get a much more competent authoritarian than Donald Trump. And so the only way to avoid that is to have a People's Party offering a different a legitimate alternative to the status quo. Because the Democrats represent the status quo. They represent nothing will fundamentally change, in Biden's own words. And the Republican Party has now become the party of change as a result of that. They've become the party of authoritarian change and populism. And people are so fed up of the status quo that when you give them a choice between the status quo, the burning building that the Democrats have trapped them in, and then any form of change whatsoever, including this kind of authoritarian populism that Trump represents, they will take that. And we saw that in 2016. That's exactly what played out in 2016. And that's exactly what's going to play out again in 2024, unless we can open up another escape hatch to that burning building and tell people, guess what? You don't have to run to something worse to get out of this burning building that the Democrats have trapped you in. You can come to something positive. You can come to something that's going to guarantee health care and a livable climate and freedom from mass incarceration and freedom from surveillance and the wars, all of these different things, an end to this medieval level inequality. You can come in that direction instead. A basic income, all these different things that have super majority support among the American people. But if the choice in 2024 is between the status quo and authoritarian populism, you'd better believe people are going to pick authoritarian populism. They're going to pick a worse Trump, a more capable Trump. And the only thing standing between that and where we are today is the People's Party and a People's Party candidate. That's the importance of work we're doing here.
He's got a bit of a messiah complex. It's funny where he's decrying authoritarian populism, right authoritarian populism, meanwhile encouraging Biden to just sign off executive orders in a leftist authoritarian populism. That dude kind of gives me the creeps a little bit. He talks out of both sides of his mouth. He's not as genuine, I don't think, as some of the other people that have been talking. But yeah, he just wants left authoritarian populism. I don't want either of them. But he is right on the reaction, what the reaction is going to be against Biden. I do think he's speaking some truth there, but I don't think it's going to inure to their benefit. I think he's going to find the same thing that we find. It's just going to be another 2024. This is the biggest election of all time. You can vote for your little third party candidate some other time. You can't not vote for the Democrat because then you're going to have whoever the fascist is in. You know, with that rhetoric, he's setting himself up to have that. We're familiar with that kind of rhetoric. Hey, I'm looking forward to them splitting the Democratic vote. I wish them all the best of luck. I just don't trust this guy. He's a little too slick. He does. Daniel Wugg's right. He does. I'm going to put this up here. Throughout this whole thing, he talks out of both sides of his mouth. And we're coming up on the final clip, and here's where you're going to see him get really slippery. And it's not on policy. It's not on anything we talked about before. Let me set this up for you. You saw that advisory council of all those shiny celebrities, right? And if you've been paying attention to all the other episodes I did, but I also kind of summarized it, where they have been very much, everyone votes on everything in this party. We voted on the name. We voted on this. We voted on that. We're grassroots. You guys control it. This isn't top down. It's bottom up. Now you're going to see where he gets called on this. And he's going to run his mouth off. He's going to have the hummingbird mouth. His hummingbird mouth is going to write a check that his alligator ass can't cash. Here we go.
All right. And if you don't mind, we had one more follow-up question that I think might have been part of the question earlier is, why the advisory council wasn't brought to a vote of the entire membership.
Well, to be able to make a surprise announcement like that and actually get the traction from the media and all the coverage that Carol listed, for example, and the big publications that covered it, and that will, it's, you can't announce it ahead of time, basically. And so we would have been scooping ourselves, essentially. We would have been releasing it before we were actually releasing it. And then we wouldn't have had the benefit of releasing it. And so a lot of announcements are most effective, if you're if you're really kind of only announcing it once. But to put it out in something like Slack, that's not a private space. That's tantamount to announcing it like to the whole world. So that's why.
I've never heard so many because if we announced it, it would be like announcing it. You didn't answer the question, dude. Why, when you are touting yourself as a party in which everyone gets to vote on everything and everything's from the bottom up, did you not let the members decide upon these celebrity voices that would be representing them? Why was this a secret room deal that you sprung on the membership? So what? You don't get a surprise announcement. You want to know, the only place I heard about this was from you guys. It wasn't all over the news. Where's this big media event that you would have sacrificed if you didn't let your members vote on it? And so what? So basically you're saying you guys get to vote on everything, asterisk, except when we at the top decide it's just better that you don't. Dude, you got caught. You got caught and you couldn't talk your way out of it. Trouble in commie paradise right there, baby. Okay, y'all. We've almost come on 2 hours of talking about our commie friends, so we are done for the night. I so appreciate you guys, having this conversation. I'm glad you find this as interesting as I do. And we learned a bit about how the LP works, even a little on their candidates, and about Top 2. So I'm going to be heading off again. Once again, please like and subscribe and maybe share if you think someone else would enjoy this. And again, if you really like the amount of work I put into this, I'm doing content that is kind of rare. Please consider becoming a patron and letting me know that you do enjoy it and help me produce more. Go to patreon.com, look up Pink Flame of Liberty. And yep, you would make me very, very happy if you did so. So good night, everyone. And next episode is going to be I'm going to back up my claim that the Libertarian Party has elected somebody to United States Congress. And we did it in 1972. All right. Love you all. Have an awesome night.
You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business.